Summer, the time of the year where artists are required to create one beach illustration. Last year, I made this. So naturally, this year, I wanted to make something to compare my progress, to see if I've improved as an illustrator. So in this video, I'll show you the process of this illustration, the ups and downs, and how I overcame them. To start off, I knew that I wanted to move away from the typical straight-ahead composition. I wanted to create a composition that you wouldn't normally see. So after going through several ideas, I thought, you know what would be really cool? What if I flip the image upside down? And that became the main concept of this illustration. So I brought my idea to life by drawing many roughs. But since I'm bad at anatomy, it can take me quite a while to draw something that resembles a human from my imagination. So instead, I chose to quickly create poses using a 3D model and then straight up trace it. I selected my favorites and put those into a proper canvas and started playing around with composition. I used the rule of third grid to help guide the line of sight, and added details of the character like facial expressions and the hair. Although doing it this way, the pose can look somewhat stiff, I still think that this is a really efficient and fast way to bring your visions to life. To create the line art, I used a really thin brush with pressure opacity. Make sure to keep your models as reference, since the perspective grids will be useful later on. For coloring, I used the same coloring system as I did in my previous video. So if you want to know how this mask system works, check out that video. I'll also put a download link to the file in the description in case you want to see how I painted the hair and the skin. But after spending hours and hours refining the skin and hair, it was at this point when I realized that I might have bit off a little more than I could chew. Something felt off. I mean, the perspective is cool and all, but overall the image looked very empty, and I'm not sure if finishing the background will fix this issue. Now that I think about it, the pose actually looked very unnatural. I mean, who sits on the beach like this? Oh. I was making sure that the upside down pose and perspective was perfect, but I totally forgot about the story behind the image. But at this point, I was starting to doubt whether this illustration was worth finishing. Maybe I should just start over. And as I was about to put the files into a folder of unfinished illustration, I remembered the phrase, "Eyes are the windows to the soul." And I thought, you know what? Maybe that's what this illustration was missing. Let's, at the very least, finish the eyes. If it's good, then perhaps I'll consider finishing the illustration. From the beginning, I was trying too hard, and the process ended up being very tedious and stressful. So for the eyes, I just wanted to relax. And that's what I did. I pulled up Migden's book and followed it step by step. First, I blurred the edges of the iris to make it soft and glossy looking. Using black, I colored in the shadows at the top, as well as adding the pupil. Then, added colored highlights at the bottom, using overlaid blend mode. Added tiny colored highlights. Brighten up the bottom with a glow, using hard light blend mode. Reflection of the sky using screen blend mode. Added more glows and colored highlights to give the eye more liveliness. Finally, added white solid highlights on top of everything. Later on, I used levels, hue saturation, and curves to make the eyes a little more vibrant. After finishing the eyes, I had a moment of relief. The illustration actually looked good. I mean, it was nowhere near finished, but it felt like the eyes single-handedly saved this illustration, and I felt excited to finish the rest of the image. In the illustration that I did last year, the waves were very far in the background, so it didn't need much details. However, this time around, the waves were gonna be a huge part of this illustration. If the waves didn't look believable, that could pull all the attentions of the viewers to it, ruining the whole image. So I had to make sure that the beach and the waves were somewhat realistic. First off, I added the sand and wet sand. The wet sand had darker edges to show moisture. I also added noise to the beach to simulate the grains of the sand. Next, I added foams created by the waves crashing onto the beach by using a combination of soft and hard brush. I blurred them in a way that showed the direction of the wave. Third step was to add the ripples. I was too lazy to draw water ripples from scratch, so instead I pasted an image I found on Google. Through using blend modes and adjustment layers, I isolated the ripples from the rest of the image. The fourth step was to add more foams, this time adding smaller foams in the distance, and foams that were created by waves coming into contact with the character. To make sure that the waves looked somewhat realistic, I was looking at real photographs of waves as reference all throughout. The final step was to add the shadows of the waves in the water. And that's it. For finishing touches, I refined and stylized the image to my liking. And this was the outcome. Comparing this to the beach illustration that I did last year, I was very happy with my progress. But I mean, now that I put them side to side, last year's one was actually a little better. The weird pose and angle was a good experiment, but I think it didn't work as well as I had hoped. But what do you think? What can I do to improve this illustration? In any case, I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.